Chris, thank you for joining us here. I would like, before we jump into anything, tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us about Tech Tac and what you do.
My background's media and advertising. Done it for about 15 years, quite a long time. Very much working in the kind of data analytics space of the more technical end of the kind of advertising industry. Really about understanding sort of how you can maximize margins in SSPs, DSPs, how you can use insights and link it through to activation. That's what Tactec's really about. It's about creating that sort of data piping that enables the link from kind of the people that you want to the people that you buy, and then to the outcome that the end advertiser wants.
Nice one, man. Nice one. Tom, welcome back, buddy.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Yeah. You want to give us a refresher in terms of like what you do and your background and everything like that?
Yeah, sure. So Tom Burrell, I run a retention strategy consultancy / agency. I have 26 years experience in retention strategies, CRM marketing. I was SVP of retention at DAZN. I run CRM at Manchester United. I've spent 13 years in agencies, of 7 years as global CRM director at Publicis Group agency. For the last 2.5 years, I've run my own retention consultancy / agency, and the offer is retention strategy consulting, working with exco teams to identify throughout the entire retention hierarchy of needs, from product proposition, acquisition quality, through to moments of truth, how you can optimize LTV and drive long-term value, and then pairing that with AI execution, so accelerating execution for clients around things like lifecycle strategy, design and build, and then also deploying retention agents.
Nice one, man. Nice one. Now, you're probably wondering, all right, why, or was the method in my mind is kind of pairing you two together? Obviously, you're two sides of the same coin, right? And I wanted to have an episode that was able to almost like provide that state of the nation for what AI is doing for marketing, right? Mm-hmm. Obviously, we don't necessarily get into like the operations of things, right? But I think Tom, with your focus on nurturing and that specific type of nurturing for like subscription businesses, right? And I know that we can get all into embeddings and all that kind of stuff, and how that unlocks so much more for brands. I want us to touch on that, because I think that the conversations that we had coming up to know is like, we got to get this on camera, right? And Chris, the same for you. Like, obviously we had like lots of discussions around like, what's the kind of future around identity matching, and how that original promise of what AI would do to kind of normalize the industry, that didn't play out. And then now what is, with the cost per acquisition and the cost of buyer traffic going up so high, what's the real opportunity for brands? I really want to dig into that a little bit more. And I'm further away from your side than I am from Tom's side, right? So for in some instances, is a refresher and a bit of education for me.
Right? I'll take it nice and slow for you. Yeah.
Let's kick off for you, if you don't mind. Because so reading through like the material that you sent, I hear you loud and clear. I hear what you're. Keep me honest here. You're saying, all right, originally AI was meant to be, like you normalize it, right? It was meant to come in, and then brands would have a lot more control and a lot more transparency and visibility in terms of like where spend went, who they can target, and what's not. Actually, you introduce this concept of walled gardens, or maybe that's not your concept per se, but that's it's quite central to the way how you kind of lay the land for me, and that's being crystallized. We are guilty of that because we are one of the walled gardens that you call out, right? Explain that walled garden concept. Well, first, have I got you right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I think the reason why walled gardens are so important is that they make up about 2/3 of media spend now, fall within the three main walled gardens, which is Meta, Google, Amazon. Make up about 66% of digital spend. Right. Then you've kind of got TikTok in there as well. They probably make up another 5 or 6% of it as well. Mm. They're also walled gardens. They make up such a huge proportion of where actually all the money's directed now.
Yeah. So when I read your briefing, it kind of explains a lot of things to me. It explains a lot of decisions, because if this occurs because it's where people go. If you got people go, you've got a captive audience. Then why don't you streamline the supply chain of value around that audience?
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically what the kind of big major walled gardens have done, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's stick a pin on that one. Tom, let me bring you in. So obviously I know your area not as good as you by far, for sure, my brother. But even in our most recent conversations, there were different customer engagements where I could apply a lot of the thinking that I got from yourself to those customers, right? We could get into that in a moment, or certainly around automotive. And I know that right now in this slither in your, big career, you're more focused on these kind of like high volume brands, right? These kind of high volume, brands.
High usage recurring revenue businesses. So things like streaming or subscription apps or publishing, brands where you get like a lot of data. Gyms can fall into that category as well.
Yeah.
But you've got like a flexible relationship. So that's where I've focused in the last 10 years in terms of my work. And that's where most of my clients come from in the last 2.5 years as well. iGaming as well is an obvious sector where gambling, where usage equals retention as well. So those kind of 4 or 5 sectors is where I focus.
But it doesn't mean that the approaches and the techniques can't be applied to.
They can be applied to things like groceries, for example, like where you've got like high volumes of data.
Yeah,
it can apply in those sectors. Also, can apply in some, like for some cohorts in the context of loyalty as well. So for customers who are like regularly buying a coffee or regularly flying with an airline, for example, those kind of cohorts where there's a lot of data, that's where most of my work sits now.
Okay. Because I think the bit with you that really kind of piqued my interest, I wanted to almost like think about a scenario where, Tom is coming to a business for the first time. The brand is doing your usual suspects, right? You've got some analytics over here, some clickety-clicks over there. Yeah. So they've got some signals, right? They've got those, what you call like the early rules, and I give you that opportunity to explain like what you mean by the kind of different levels in a moment. Yeah. So they're not bad, right? And I imagine a situation where to establish this whole concept of embeddings, and you can explain embeddings better than I do, there's a waiting period. There's a period to establish, and there's a period to learn, and then there's a period to experiment, and it comes at a risk. And I really wanted to explore that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Right. So I think probably just kind of take a step back.
Sure,
I think what we've seen over the last sort of 10 years or so is vast improvements in retention. Mm-hmm. And you think about the kind of the eras that exist within retention. I call retention 1.0, like is your simple reporting, like your churn reports, your retention curves. Yeah. Your CRM marketing is kind of pull a list, send a message. Broad segments, if there's segments at all. That's retention 1.0. Yeah. Retention 2.0 is predictive models and machine learning, and that's kind of emerged a lot in the last 10 years. And a lot of brands are using that capability. And you think about in the context of CRM marketing, that's your lifecycle strategist, like automation based on segmentation again, but using kind of hard rules still. Like it's still rules, because it's still, if a customer doesn't complete onboarding by day 7, send them an email, give them a call, serve them a product intervention. And even at a segmented level, it's still rules, because there is really no average customer, or the average customer is only a real slither of your base. Yes. And then where we're moving towards, and some subscription apps are already there, is retention 3.0. And so what that is about understanding behavioral state. So on the one side, in 2.0, segmentation, personalization was all about what are you interested in, what are you doing, and therefore serving something relevant to you. Yeah. But in the high usage recurring revenue businesses that I work with, you have a lot of rich data. And so then you can start to understand with embeddings movement. And basically what embeddings is basically the brain behind LLMs. So like ChatGPT, hundreds of billions of data points that drives the connection when somebody says, what's the weather going to be like tomorrow? It creates these connections between those words and then delivers a response to that, right? It's because it exists in this shared meaning space.
Yeah.
And you can use embeddings models if you've got a lot of signals and feed a pre-built embedding model, such as the ones that AWS offers, but also Google and other brands. Yeah. You can feed your signals feed the embedding models your signals, and then at an individual level, you can start to determine where a customer is starting to drift away from value or drift towards value. Rather than saying there's a hard rule, so I think a really easy example to think about is like a gym, right? Hard rule in a gym would be, if you don't go to the gym, monthly flex gym, in 2 weeks, then you've got a very high propensity to churn. And a lot of the gyms, they operate on that model, right? But embeddings would say, okay, this customer is checking out a bit more quickly than they usually do. Right. Their frequency over the last 6 weeks has dropped from their regular three times a week cadence to 2, and then sometimes only 1. Yeah. So this customer may be in trouble, they may be moving away, they may be losing motivation, and there may be a risk for us. Yeah. And so then how do we intervene with them to get them back onto the right path? And that might be helping them because they're struggling to see results, or it might be that they've got bored of the class they're doing. So how do you introduce novelty, or how do you help them to maintain momentum? And so what embeddings does and what retention 3.0 does is it allows you to, rather than when you reach kind of a hard rule or a fixed signal, like we can talk about churn models as well, my views on that, and we can talk about that later. Rather than hit kind of a fixed point, you can correct the course before somebody is even themselves necessarily has thought that they're actually going to disengage with the brand.
So your point, so let's bring it up now, right? So your point around churn and churn models is, keep me honest here, right? So the idea is actually, if you start to get indicators of churn, you're already kind of too late in many cases. And I use that analogy of, if you're in automotive, if I go and kind of, go and download the kind of remaining finances on my PCP, I probably want to sell the car. Right? So but the decision to sell it happened maybe 6 months. I clocked, I'm going to be in positive equity.
Yes.
Right? And that is, it's not that you don't know that. Right? It's just that you don't have, it's always been kind of cost prohibitive for you to observe every customer that you've got to work out when they've reached positive equity, and therefore it slips by.
And that's the problem, right? So like a lot of people think when they think about AI, and obviously not in this room, but they think that AI is like generative, right? It's like, it's all about creating content. There's a chatbot that gives you a response, or it's about creating an email or creating an ad, right? But actually the real power in AI is using it within the context of your data. So your examples, is an interesting one. I mean, I've worked in automotive, but where I focus is not that sector now. I think you're right, though, with your example. I want to caveat this, what I'm going to say now, is in that I do believe churn models work in some very heavily contracted sectors, like telcos, for example. Churn models where you go out and you identify a cohort they're likely to leave at the end of a contract, and you offer them a very compelling proposition that can encourage them to stay, right? For sure. Yeah. But in the context of like flexible recurring revenue relationships like streaming, gambling, iGaming, where there isn't actually a contracted relationship at all. It's just about maintaining momentum, or publishing as well, where it's, most of the time it's month to month, or most subscription apps as well that you download from the App Store that are intermittent. When you try and leverage a churn model in those contexts, you're using signals based on customers who already left. And so when you go out to the cohort that is in your churn model that has a high propensity to churn, the usual response is to give them some sort of discount or some sort of offer to encourage them to stay. But the problem is, it was never really the financial motivation that drove them to disengage with the brand. It was usually to do with the fact they didn't get a result fast enough. They got bored of it, like the novelty has worn off, particularly like streaming or sometimes in gambling as well. Or they've lost momentum, or they don't feel valued, like the service experience has been poor, or they don't feel recognized for their loyalty. So those motivational behavioral drivers, like they're too strong to save somebody from a 20% off, right? And so therefore, when you go out with those kind of churn save offers, proactive, before somebody's actually indicated they want to leave, you get very minimal impact, because what you'll see against your control group is the people who take that offer are the people who would have stayed anyway. They've just demonstrated a signal that indicates, based on the retention 2.0 hard rule, that it's a signal that they have a propensity to churn. But they have no interest in churn. So they'll take your 20%. Thanks very much. I'll stay in anyway. I'll have the discount, right? And then the control group, the people who are going to leave, they leave anyway. So that's why you see like very, very marginal incremental uplift, or you see like no incremental uplift.
Gotcha.
You can, that doesn't matter how good your model is. Like I've had worked with clients and data scientists who said, our model's brilliant. It's like 90% accurate. We can predict who's going to churn. The problem is not how good the model is. The problem is the intervention. And so when we're going back to embeddings again, what embeddings allows you to do is to see that slope change before the signal rises. And so you can correct the course. So when somebody loses momentum, gets bored, doesn't have an early onboarding success, doesn't feel valued, you can intervene in the right moment and correct the course before that mindset of churn sets in.
So I wanna take some time to kind of like flesh it out a little bit more. But let me bring Chris in for a moment.
Of course.
Right? So Chris, how does that work now? Are there any implications from a paid perspective? Anything that Tom just mentioned?
I think the evolution we've just heard is exactly what's going on in the paid ecosystem.
Right.
I think the difference in this is that there's a level of visibility and control that you guys have in that model and that system and how effectively that decision engine, that embeddings model operates. What's happening with the wall gardens, that's effectively what they're doing. In the old world, what was happening was that the advertiser was the one that was determining the people they wanted to go after, the rule, right? It's like, these are the people I believe on the basis of my understanding of my brand or what my first party signals telling me or what my survey's telling me, that these are people that I think are my future opportunity, my growth opportunity. These are the people I want you to serve ads to. Increasingly, what we're finding within the walled garden ecosystem is a pulling back of that approach and saying, actually, you shouldn't be doing that. What you should be doing is going much broader. Just target all adults. And once we know your brand and your creative, and we start to get an initial signal, the type of people that are maybe clicking on the ad or hovering over the video or eventually going through to buy on your website, that is almost training a real-time live model, and they're finding other people who look like that.
But does that come at a cost to the customer? So because when I hear that, I hear, actually, if I was going to spend $2 just to target specifically based on control that I had, I'm now paying an extra $4 to kind of cast the net wider and whittle down to that same audience. Is it?
Well, the theory is, this is the theory anyway, is that it doesn't cost you anymore because you're going so broad. There's actually much more wastage that you actually have in the system by having this very prescriptive target, because you've just naturally shrunk your pool, and you're probably speaking to a whole bunch of people in theory that aren't actually interested in your product at all. And actually, by going really broad, they can sort of almost find the best value people for your particular brand to get you to your outcome. So the theory is, and I think for probably most businesses that I suppose maybe at more of the lower level end of your maturity model, it's a really attractive proposition, right? Because ultimately what advertisers really care about is an outcome. Outcomes is a big term in our industry. It's like, I want to get more sales, I want more people to view my ads. That's the outcome that someone wants. And what the walled gardens have done that's very attractive to me is to say, I can get you that, and I can do it the most cost-effective way possible. The problem with that is that you have no visibility over how they've got there. So, because it's effectively it's done by a machine, it's not done by a human. The human's gone completely out of this system now. And some of the challenge that you can have with that is, if you don't specify the right outcome for your brand, it will optimize towards the behavior and not necessarily the final outcome, which, let's be honest, is brand growth. It's getting more sales. It's about getting incremental ROAS. If you don't really have the right setup in the first place, you're going to be optimizing towards a behavior, not the outcome.
So I wonder if this kind of links to something that you said in your briefing document, where you were saying, all right, in the age of where the agent is shopping on your behalf, which you're ways out now, right? And there's no clickety clicks, there's no PDPs, there's no PLPs, none of that. Then this whole thing kind of gets dismantled in a sense, and therefore all of a sudden brand advertising bubbles up.
Yeah.
I think that's what we got that right.
I think that is where we're eventually going to start getting to, and I think that is going to be down to the fact of where once we get to a world where we have personalized AI, which I think is where we're going to eventually get to. I mean, who knows how far away this might be. But once you effectively have an agent that's basically making the decisions on your behalf, that you just say to it, I want to buy some new trainers. That will go off and find you 20 different trainer brands. Oh, there's an offer over here, there's an offer over here. But the old way that advertising worked, and particularly in these kind of more algorithmic, performance-based worlds, was we want to retarget these people with an offer that might be in their basket. Yeah. We want to make sure that we're top of the search when they are coming to market for the product. Yeah. That's effectively what fuels most advertising, is this kind of like underlying, when they're in market, we want to catch them, we want to get them. How does that work when we're in an AI world? Where are you advertising to a robot? Probably not. What you need to actually start to do from a behaviour change point of view is not intervene when they're in market. You need to be more top of mind when they ask an agent for a particular product. So that the question you then send to your agent isn't, I want a new pair of blue trainers. It would be, I want a blue pair of Nike trainers, because you have a natural consumer preference. You're almost doing the filtering on the behalf of the agent, being like, don't give me anything from these other brands. I only want this particular brand.
And even if it came back with a set of shoes that weren't Nike, you'd probably go something like, any chance you could include one, like the options from Nike? Don't Nike have any options?
Yeah, precisely.
Because you want to, I see what you mean.
And so as we're going to get agents so increasingly accustomed to understanding what that individual wants, I suppose it kind of goes back to your point of individual level motivations, the art of advertising is going to be about being part of the motivation. You need to be a part of that motivation, right? You need to be, that's what it needs to fuel, that I want this brand, I don't want this one. And that means that advertising ceases to be so much about intervening at the moment of sale. It becomes much more about building the brand and becoming the preferential choice that they're going to only want their agent to provide for you. Wow. And I think that actually just means that advertising is going to become a completely different system again. And it's going to be much more about understanding cultural signals. It's about driving much more around earned behavior. There's going to be so much more about being part of the conversation. It's actually really kind of going back to the future into much more of a kind of brand building world, and less into the kind of intricacies of driving little increases in CPAs within this channel and that channel, because the truth is that's kind of the AI structure that we have kind of does that for you now.
So the underlying premise of what you're saying, the assumption is any advertising that happens in a AI world, digital AI assistant world, is going to erode the trust of using that tool. And therefore, all of the talk around, there's going to be advertising soon and whatever, and different tools I can't mention them, that's gonna push, people are gonna push back hard on that.
I think so.
Yeah.
Because what's the point?
Fair. No, fair.
Like, what is the? I know that there are certain platforms that are starting to introduce advertising within their chatbots. People don't use chatbots, I don't think, with a view of a more enhanced version of search. Right? I think they actually genuinely believe that it is finding the best possible answer out of all of the sources that are out there, and giving you that the answer. It's giving you the answer. It's not giving you the suggestion. And I think the moment you start introducing advertising into those answers, people are consumer aware enough to know what that actually means, is that now it's not giving me the right answer anymore. It's giving me the one that someone's paid for.
You could tell that Chris was a researcher in a previous life, right?
Yes, of course.
Tom, I want to bring you back in. So there's something I'm dying to explore with you, right? So here, bear with me. Let's walk through it together, all right? Sure. So you've sold me on the embeddings, and I'm thinking, all right, Tom comes in. First thing he's going to tell me is, all right, Dwayne, you're capturing like key signals. There's some moments of that matter are moments of truth that you're capturing. There's a lot that you aren't, right? So first you got to spend a little bit of money to try to see if we could capture those signals somehow.
Yes.
Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to almost like build the base and the foundations to serve the embeddings in the right way.
Yeah.
Okay. Then he's going to say, all right, Dwayne, now you've got all the right signals. We now want to do a couple of things. We want to allow the embeddings to almost like create these archetypes, these clusters of people and behaviors that, you would start to see the whole dots of people kind of clustering together.
Exactly, yeah.
But at an individual level, each person has got also almost like a little fingerprint of behaviors that they've got. And if you see any little dot drifting away from either the cluster or the fingerprint, there's a set of agent actions that we're going to apply to that.
Exactly. I mean, you've absolutely nailed it. It's exactly how it works. Yeah. So we're talking about one-to-one individualized retention marketing, like the dream that's been promised for like 20 plus years, right? It's actually now possible with AI and agents. And the way you described is exactly how it works. So customers will be grouped into high momentum, activated, novelty seeking, for example. And then there'll be a group that's at risk, and you'll see a novelty seeker that's still a novelty seeker, but drifting towards that risk, or an activated drifting towards that risk. And then the role of the retention marketing team is to define the action space that the agent could operate within the parameters of that drift. And what that means is defining channels, messages, offers, or bonuses in gambling. What can the agent do at that moment? And then the agent then speaks to the execution platforms, whether that's serving something on the CMS, or whether that's sending a message, or whether that's changing the content priority on the app, or whether it's sending a push notification. And it makes that decision, or even feeding an instruction into like an outbound team to contact the customer directly, or to service something within the service function if somebody contacts inbound. All of those decisions. So all of your execution tech stays the same. All you're doing is you're taking your cloud data provider and their LLM capability and plugging their agent orchestration frameworks onto it and sending the execution platform smarter data. So that's exactly how it works.
So all right. So, I got this little, I'm not calling it a disadvantage, but after you start to deliver products and put yourself in a kind of product or delivery mentality, you start to see everything like that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, all right, hang on. Well, you've joined in that scenario, and the business is just waiting. You first you did some techie tech stuff, and then you did some waiting, and it's like, well, where's the drop in value? When you're gonna do a value drop? I think like the business has got to wait a little bit.
Yeah, there's a cold start problem for sure, right? You have to, and I think it's the same in media as well, right? When you embark on a big campaign, and everyone will know if they're using Meta, you invest a load of money. There's a bit of a cold start problem, especially now with the big audiences. Yeah, it's the same with this. You do have a cold start problem, but the way you get over that is by overlaying intelligence, so around what works within the specific context at the specific moment. So there's a lot of retention marketing, which is like based on experience or based on guess, right? And I'd probably say this is probably similar in acquisition. There's a lot of that there as well, right? But if you've got those frameworks, you've got that context that's connected to your AI and what works, how you structure an onboarding program to drive the best outcome, and deep knowledge of your sector as well, then that knowledge can be used to enhance the speed to value for the agent, but the agent will still need to learn, right? It's not like the AI magic switch. You can't press the AI magic switch and then everything is wonderful, right? You do need to learn, and the AI agents work it's individualized, but they're not. It's not testing. It's not doing A/B testing. It's continuously learning on the context. So a customer X has this behavioral profile. This is the background dimensions. We've got this to choose from. We'll drop this message. We'll change this in the CMS. We can go to this limit on the offer. We'll drop this offer. We'll contact 3 times in a row, and then learns the sequence continuously for different contexts. And then in like markets like sports apps and sports clubs I work with as well, like seasonality play a big role as well, and so that also gets layered in. And this is where rules-based lifecycle strategies and rules-based programs always fail because
I think
they don't have that continuous context.
But I think I get you then. So what you're saying is, all right, fine, I come in, yeah, you got a kind of cold start weight in this sense, but I guess what you're saying is there's work to do around applying some automation to the almost like the downstream workflow as well. Because I see this thing as two bits, and keep me honest here. Eh? I think there's the brain around understanding people and signals and behaviors and understanding drift and all that kind of stuff on this side, right? Yeah. And there's some good ML ops and different things that you can set up on this side.
Yeah.
Stuff. But then there's some work to be done around, okay, taking a signal at an individual level or at a kind of mini cluster level and going, okay, this is the pool of images, this is the pool of what I roughly would say with the brand, this is the pool of whatever, and then we craft what seems like an individual message for that. And you could almost start with this at the same time, because there's some learning that needs to happen with the business and introducing them to this, and there's some levels of discomfort letting the machine run with that, right? Yeah. On this side as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, the way you described it is exactly right. Like, you kind of define what I call like an action space. Like, these are the things that we'd like to happen. Then you have to obviously plug in the automation that the agent can then talk to and say, right, trigger this to the contact center, this message. So if this customer contacts or this group of customers contacts, serve this, or to your ESP, send this email. All of that kind of configuration needs to happen. Yeah. But the moment in which you intervene is determined by the drift signal. Yeah. The value can also be determined by the drift signal. So if you're thinking in terms of, like, I've mentioned gambling a couple of times, like in terms of gambling, there's like 4 kind of profiles. Like, there's value growth drift, which is not a regulatory concern. There's value growth drift, which is a regulatory concern, where it's too much. Like, people are going to lock out and cause themselves a problem that you can intervene before, and you can stop them from harm and also protect LTV. That's the kind of double benefit. And then there's like activated. Like, you don't need to do anything with these people. They're fine. They're in a rhythm. They're enjoying what they're doing, right? So it's about understanding those different behaviors and then creating action spaces for those different behaviors at different moments, which contain a combination of offers and messages. And then you also have the layer, which is where a lot of retention 2.0 is, like the personalization layer. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, to take a streaming example now for a change, So like sports and entertainment streaming brand, you know, you like sports and you like Russian horror movies, right? So, but I like, tennis and action movies. But we're showing very similar drift signals. So we're actually going to be in the same action space, but actually the content that we're going to serve is going to be quite different. The pool of content will
be very different. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tell you about all the upcoming Russian horror movies and maybe offer you a discount to stay for the next 3 months, whereas something else, I'll get something else, right? So that's the tennis championships that are on, right?
So, but then so I get the practicalities of like Tom's world. Let me try yours, okay? I'm gonna really struggle here, boy. So in a world where I now need to connect and I need to see, I guess, customers across different platforms, which platforms are we talking about? Are we talking about across those different walled gardens?
So the way I think it's exactly the same challenge, but with a slightly different purpose and slightly different challenges and how you kind of get there, right? But I think the ultimate goal is exactly the same, right? It's just, you're just doing it for ones to get them in and the other ones to stop them from leaving, right? But the goal is exactly the same. It's about understanding the signals and the motivations of a person, and then the goal then becomes, from an advertising space, is about how can you actually start to draw in signals from different data sets, data points that allow us to try and start to understand what are the patterns that are going on, what are the potential motivations for this particular audience versus that particular audience. How can I do and I think that the way AI is going to start moving in the media and advertising space is away from the micro-optimization platform, because, as we've said, that's being handled by the walled gardens themselves, and in truth is going to make marginal difference to your efficiency in reality. All advertising and all MMM, all your econometrics will tell you the same thing, is that those micro-optimizations add very little incremental ROI. Right? They will do a bit, and they don't do any harm. There's no harm in doing it, but the way that you really make your media work really, really hard is with good creative, really understanding the right message to the right person. That's something that really moves the dial. It's the Don Draper stuff. Right. It's not the me. It's like the people who understand the big pitch, the big motivations, how you can create the right messages to bring that to the right people. Okay. I think that where I think AI is going to start going is like, how can we start to stitch together different signals, of which there are millions that you can actually get, even from walled gardens themselves, that can start to give us that view of like, what is the kind of right message for this particular person or for this particular campaign or for this particular product. Right. And that's where, brands can go supersonic, right? If you happen to hit on a cultural nuance or a particular moment, brands can come from nowhere to stratospheric in a second.
Remember back, I know this is a while back, Chris, right? But you used to go, okay, well, you qual and you quant. Yeah. And you would go, okay, well, and I don't know if this is relevant or if you even do this anymore, but imagine a world where you take all of the rich embeddings and signals. You can't even count that. A human can't even count the amount of things that you said, right? But then you go, okay, well, this is your ideal archetype, brand A, right? Like, I've worked that out for you. Like, I know a lot of the work that I've been doing has been centered around retention, but by the way, as a byproduct, I've also worked out where you're like, if you want to do a lookalike, this is your lookalike here. If you were able to take that group and go, let's say there's 10,000 people, 20 of them, like, understand them from a qualitative perspective, really understanding motivations, like what they do to the left and right of you, then is that still something that you can do in terms of understanding, like,
I think that's where there's still a huge amount of value in that. And I think there's some really interesting moves in the industry towards these kind of synthetic audiences where you actually don't need to speak to a real person. You will create the persona off the embeddings, and you'll create a different persona and a different persona, and they'll artificially almost like talk to each other. And this is where a lot of research is going to go. In truth, it's probably because it's quite a lot cheaper than actually getting real people in a real room. But I think that's by the by. But I think that the process is exactly the same again, right? It's like, it's all about, you have to have it underpinned by embeddings. And I mean, it's kind of what we now do. We've moved as a business away from the micro-optimizations towards the macro thinking, how you can get all of these signals from various data sets and create this kind of like multi-agentic MCP style system, which is embedding all of these real-time data and signals. And then if you're a particular brand or you're after a particular audience, you want to understand, what kind of musicians they're really into this month. It's calling out to the embeddings model that's there, to the sub-agent that manages that embeddings model. So it says, tell me on Meta, or tell me what the trendy musicians on TikTok, or tell me what people are really listening to on Spotify. And it's pre-embedded so that it can actually then retrieve that answer in an instant. So it's almost like, I suppose, doing a bit of the qual and a bit of the quant, but you're really allowing kind of these sub-agents to do a lot of the analysis and the work for you.
There's a piece of work I saw from Stanford. The first time I heard the term agent wasn't from any of the things in our world. It was an academic context, and I it's a chance to get this wrong, but here we go. I remember that they had created like this massive simulation. They had particular like persona types of agents, and they animated it so that you would be able to see these different persona types in a little village that looked like old school Zelda from Super Nintendo. And it was kind of multidimensional. They understood different things and different motivations and different characters. Right, so one was a bit kind of brachicorter, a bit cheapy, and then the other one was more kind of spendthrift, and they would overlay different messaging or different things to them to see how they would respond. And the idea was, I think, is what you're talking about. It was that you can take information that you gathered from quant and qual, apply it to these personas, and then test different messages and different, outcomes with them. And you could apply it to all sorts of stuff, politics, all sorts of different things. And therefore the cost for you to test an idea all of a sudden significantly drops.
Exactly. And I think that is really where the AI unlock is coming in the future. I think that's where it really is coming from. It's that ability to be able to take something. I think one thing I will say in all this is like take something that's actually real, right? Extract the information, embed it so an AI can read it effectively, meaningfully, and understand the patterns, and then use that to extract strategic value from real understanding of what's going on, real behaviors.
Well, like that, my friend. Tom, let me bounce back at you for a minute, because thinking back to like your team setup, who's actually doing this stuff?
So you need a combination of people, right? So obviously you need your technology team to help with the setup around the infrastructure. I always think with embeddings particularly as well, it's very good to get your data science team involved, your analytics team involved, although usually they come from that history of, propensity models, churn models that I was talking about before. And then in terms of defining the action spaces, it's usually your retention marketers, the people that are doing like day-to-day CRM marketing and have built those lifecycle journeys. It's those guys that are defining, what's the message, what's the offer, working with the commercial teams, working with the product teams. And then you probably have a product flavor in there as well, depending on your business. But it's usually a cross-functional effort. But usually kind of the strategic functional lead will sit within marketing. That's the case with a lot of what we do, isn't it? It often sits there.
But the reason why you maybe hear me sound a bit surprised, but the reason why you sound a bit surprised is that bit around the operations. So I've been in a lot of conversations with them right now. I think by default, because the head count has historically been like that, and we're trying something new, then it stays like that. But then, certainly in the engagements I've been in, I always think to myself, is this team going to stay like that? Unless the tooling dumbs down. I'm not saying that, people in there, they're not capable, but as in like, it can get quite complicated. Right? So I was wondering, either the tooling becomes easier to understand, or you start to kind of come like upskill people in that. Because I think people in that capacity right now, when we talk around like the operations and marketing, they're accustomed to like your Brazes.
They're building the rules, right?
They're building the rules,
That's what they do every day.
Right.
Yeah, so it is a mindset shift as well, and there's obviously a lot of fear, isn't there, right, in the industry still, kind of pumped up by some of the AI brands around like how AI is going to reduce everybody's jobs and so on. So I think there's still some fear around that. And there's also, because people are so focused operationally on, delivering, I often get questions like, so what's the GOAT retention marketing tool for CRM 3.0, for retention 3.0? And there's not an answer to that, right? There's not one technology. It's like, you need your cloud infrastructure and your data signals, and actually you can still use your Brace. You can still use, and I don't see a world where you're never going to need a journey, right? In a regulatory context, in things like, iGaming, for example, you do need to, when a trigger is crossed, you need to message people, right? So there will be a point when journeys are still always going to be needed in most businesses. Service issues, for sure, right? But, and I sort of feel like sometimes those CRM marketing folk, they're a little bit scared of it. But they're the best placed to be able to understand, and they have a lot of interfaces into lots of other disciplines, including acquisition, including product, including service, including to be able to build those action spaces correctly. I think I've worked with organizations where they set up a separate AI unit, right? And the AI unit is the business unit for AI, right? And they then coordinate everything. The problem with that is that unit doesn't understand the discipline well enough, right? So that unit will go and ask, so what are you doing now? And then they'll deliver a solution which automates an existing workflow, right? And there's nothing wrong with AI. There's nothing wrong with a bit of automation. But what you won't see is if you take all of your CRM 2.0 and all your rules and you automate them, you spend $4 million in 6 months automating everything. You might save a bit of headcount, but you're not going to see any real movement in the P&L because you're just going to be doing the same as what you did before, right? So like while automation is absolutely part of CRM 3.0, it's actually where the value comes is from better understanding your data and then using the data to deliver better personalized experiences. And a lot of the brands, the MarTech vendors, they're doing great stuff, right? But they're doing it with like Gen AI, doing things like build a journey with a prompt, like build an email for you, right? And it's like, it's good and it's valuable and it helps personalization at an attribute level, but it doesn't help in terms of making a shift with AI that then actually has a transformation on the business.
It made me think, and I've seen this a lot in multiple domains, not just marketing, but there's a more thinking that needs to go into what the handoff is. So hear me out with this one. So if you said to me, actually, you know what, Dwayne? Yes, we're going to do some AI magic to work out the embeddings. Yes, we're going to do some AI magic to work out the signals. And yes, in theory, we're going to do some AI magic to actually create the personalized message and journey for each of those individuals, because it's cost prohibitive if we don't, right?
Right message, right offer, right time. So then it's not really a journey. It's like it's like you can get 10 messages in a row in 5 days, whereas I would get none because I'm a different profile. There's no fixed rule.
Fair. Hey, true. I'm not gonna try my best to then replace the person who's actually constructing, who would typically construct or orchestrate all of those things. I'm gonna stop short. I'm going to build like what I think the journeys and messages and all the different kind of tiny little messages for each of those individuals. And then I'm then going to let those teams pick up from there and then do the deployment. Something like that. That's what I'm thinking. There's a nice little handoff between the two groups.
There can be. I think so. I mean, it depends on the organization, the concepts we're talking about. And I think smaller organizations, automation and personalization, CRM 2.0 using retention 2.0 using AI for that is like massively valuable because they don't have a team. But in other organizations, we got like 100 people, right? We're working in retention marketing. And there is organizations like that. There's a few that I can name, right, in the UK. Those teams, they have strategic leaders that understand, that operate at a very senior level. They're often Exco -1, usually report to the CMO or report to the CCO. Right. They have a very kind of good lens on the strategic direction of the organization. Even their reports are not in operations. They're not building stuff, right? So, so that sort of layer are intellectually experienced enough to be able to build these action spaces, because it's not even really, it's not massively different to a journey, really. It's just saying, like, these are the different offer, message, and channel variants. These are the controls. These are the limits that you can operate within, Whereas when you build a journey, you say, okay, at this cohort, at this moment, we want to send an email with an offer. At this cohort, at this moment, we want to do an in-app pop-up, right? It's the same. But it's just putting it into a bit more of a looser framework. And then the other point to add on to that is that agents can also do the optimization of the components within a message. So if you think about like a push note, so like what emoji are you going to use? What's the very first line? What's the structure of the message? What's the image? What's the CTA language? So the agent can do that reinforcement learning like we do creative optimization in media, right? So basically, it will learn that Chris responds to humor, right? You respond to facts, I respond to stories, whatever, and then could then message us differently. So that's where you truly get to this point of embeddings determines the moment and sometimes the value of the intervention because of the type of drift that's occurring. And then the messaging is determined by the understanding of the customer at a very deep level, like beyond just like, it takes gambling again because it's quite an easy example because there's a lot of different variants, like beyond just like you like slots, you like sportsbook, more like you're a Crystal Palace fan. You usually bet at the end of the season on the next season's who's going to win the league and right. Whereas you're a slots player, you play every Friday night, right? So those kind of behaviours, and then not even at that level, like into like this is your favourite game, and that's
okay.
So that's the opportunity, right? It's like it's where I said like a little while ago, like 20 years ago, and all the MarTech vendors have been pitching it for 20 years. We're going to deliver one-to-one marketing. It's one-to-one marketing. It never was one-to-one marketing, but it never was. Most of that 20 years, it was lists and it was big campaigns, right, and basic rules. But it's become a lot more sophisticated in the last 10 years with predictive models and so on. And in the last 2 years, as like function calling got better and embeddings became possible in real time, we can now, there is now brand subscription apps and some others that are moving into this retention 3.0 world, and everyone will get there. Everybody will get there. But how fast will it happen? Who knows? Because there's the resistance to control, there's the resistance to change.
Well, it feels uncomfortable, right? Because there's, just having a conversation with one of my colleagues just this morning, actually. And I was saying to them, well, all right, if I think back to when it was, back at EE or, and they say, well, you got a certain budget, but that budget is really to allow you to deliver specific outcomes for the business, right? People are judging you based on that, bro, right? So if Mr. Tom or Mr. Chris came and said, well, you could do some agentic. Well, one, fine, I might take a portion of that and actually run an experiment. But I wouldn't feel comfortable with the idea of disrupting like my kind of BAU outcomes that much, because I know people come screaming and shouting at me, right? So you'll always get that. But I don't feel, unless I took that risk, I don't think I'll get to a point where I can understand the phenomenon that you're mentioning. So the idea that this particular archetype responds better to this type of messaging and really understand that at scale. So I'm almost stuck, right? If I don't take a risk and step in.
Exactly. You've got to jump in, but at the same time, it's not like a risk where you're saying, right, I'm going to throw all my journeys away and I'm going to put all my eggs in one basket and I'm just going to bet on this. Nah, right? That's not the way it works, right? You pick a moment in the lives, and often you'll know, right? AWS know. Lots of brands struggle with data, right? Struggle with getting the data in a kind of really organized, structured manner to be able to do it across the entire life cycle. So with the kind of the brands that I work with, what I recommend is like look at the moment in the relationship where you got like the steepest drop off in retention. It's usually onboarding. It's usually like first 30 days or first 90 days or first week. That's where you see the deepest disengagement. And then you can identify your signals, your behavioral signals, and feed them into the embedding model for that moment. And so you don't need like 500 event pristine schema for every different customer and every different moment. You just need to focus, and then you can get that data in order, and then you can. It's not a lot. It doesn't cost a lot for like a lot of the brands that AWS customers have already got the capability as part of their contracts, right? It's just about leveraging the capability they already have, and it's not about replacing your MarTech
and layering on complexity.
Layering on complexity. It might be a like small, vector investment, but it's not a lot, right? It's just about time actually, and getting everybody aligned around what you're going to deliver together as a team. And like you said, so it's, it's not. You can stay with doing what you're doing now, if you like, but if you do that, you're going to fall behind for sure, right? So you have to start small and start to do these pilots. Yeah,
we call that transformation muscle. I hear you 100% on that, because I think sometimes with everything that we've done before, and I can come to you in a moment, Chris. With everything that we've done before, you can buy the capability, right? You can say, oh well, I see XYZ doing some nice marketing emails. Okay, we're going to buy the tool that they got. And I said they had 3 people in the team. I can get 3 people and they're roughly this shape. And I saw that they work with Deloitte. Okay, going to get Deloitte. And I can buy the thing, right? But no, actually, you just can't buy the thing. You also got to actually do the work and do like the weighting and the learning that is unique to your company with your employees, and they have to codify the things in their head and put it in your agents, and then you actually get the output.
Which is why this whole thing of AI is going to take everyone's jobs is a complete myth.
Nonsense.
To be honest, it's just not true, is it? It's exactly to that point. Right. People's jobs aren't going away. It's like, it's no different. I did history at university. I don't know how I ended up in this industry or doing what I do now, but I did history.
I did geography.
And, when the spinning jenny was invented, and now people lost all their weaving apprenticeship jobs, didn't find everyone suddenly didn't have a job anymore because someone needs to fix the machine. Right? The nature of the job changes, and I think AI is exactly the same. AI is just has smoothed out the edges of, actually, to be honest, the work that we don't really want to do as much of. It does a lot of the graft, and actually the thinking is the bit that AI is not going to be able to. It's not going to be able to do, really truly be able to do your proper brand context or really understand your company's true goals.
The judgment layer.
The judgment layer, exactly.
Yeah, and just to comment on your point there, because you're exactly right. People want to buy MarTech. That's why I get these questions like, what's the best tool for retention 3.0? It's like, and you're right. People want to buy the solution, right? Mm-hmm. That's why they buy an AI team, right? Who's an AI generalist. But you can buy the skills of the people that know what to do to help your team to be more successful. And that's the sort of.
I hear you, boy. I hear you with that. I hear it every day.
I think it's so interesting, kind of going back to your point there about that kind of one-to-one marketing thing, because I'm so torn on this in like the kind of advertising world, because I think I've worked on many new business pitches over the years, and I've sort of perhaps slightly massaged the truth about the capability of that kind of ability to do one-to-one outside of your own ecosystem. Your own ecosystem, you have so much control over who these people are and the ID of that individual. Trying to do this in the media world, I mean, the theory always was you could ID stitch people and you could sort of like onboard these various platforms, and then you could sort of identify that person. They're also over here and they're over in this website, they're doing this over here. The reality was you can't really, or you can't really ever do it to that one-to-one level.
Right.
And I think that when we sort of think about the way advertising more generally is starting to work, as all that AI is shifted behind the walled garden and you have even less visibility of who you're actually targeting, like, I actually wonder whether the future of AI from a kind of acquisition perspective is not necessarily in doing one-to-one communications, because I think we've tried and we've slightly failed with it. And I think it's going to fail even more as more and more legislation kind of comes into it. From an acquisition perspective, I actually sort of like maybe done a bit of a 180 on it. I think it was always about the right message to the right person at the right time. I think that there's an element of that is true, but I think that the way you execute it is you shouldn't be thinking about this at like an individual level. I think it's about understanding the kind of folds in time of like, oh, people are really interested in this particular moment right now, or there's a particular something we can particularly like jump on. That kind of cultural element of it, I think, is actually how you create relevant communications for the mass. I think we need to think advertising almost, again, kind of going back to the future a little bit of advertising being is about acquisition to the mass market. And actually, I think there's potentially just as much power in one big message that gets sent out to everyone that can create a cultural moment. Actually, is a lot more effective than trying to do one-to-one communications to people in the outside world. That comes with all of the MarTech costs. That means that I always say the juice often isn't worth the squeeze. Right? You spend so much money on all the technology and getting your first-party data in the right place, and then matching to partners, and those partners will charge you loads more for CPM to target those people. And it's suddenly I'm paying 8 times more to communicate to someone who may or may not be the person I think I'm speaking to.
Right, I see what you mean.
And actually, maybe I'll be better off actually just sort of treating advertising what advertising always was. Maybe we should go back to the Donald Draper world of actually create a really meaningful communication strategy and just use AI and all of the millions of data signals to do that in a much more effective, smart way. Use AI to create Donald Drapers. Don't use it to create people who are sort of doing that one-to-one communication.
Because like advertising as well, I'm going into your world, but advertising can create culture as well, can't it? Right.
Exactly.
I just think about the KFC ads that are going at the moment, right? Like the kind of connection that they create with people, because they're just so off the wall, right?
Exactly.
So brands can create culture if they understand their audience.
Precisely. And I always worry a little bit that AI's just got to become such like we've just got so technical in this world. We've sort of just forgotten the art a little bit.
I see what you mean.
I think and I think that. And I think because AI is obviously so complicated, and we've even been talking a lot about embeddings models and this, and it's all those technical people, and it kind of puts off actually the true practitioners of advertising, which is actually people who create messages that appeal to people.
Yes.
And AI should be there to facilitate that. It shouldn't be this kind of either or world that I think we sort of end up finding ourselves
I agree with that.
I think you got like you there's a level of, I like where you're going, and let me summarize that, because what you're saying is you want to actually make better use of the science to amplify the art.
Yeah.
All the nuance
that's
that exists
exactly
in the world.
it. You put it so well. Yeah, that's exactly it.
There's ways you can do that as well, right? Like both in terms of creating the concept that you lead with, but also in terms of like thousands of variants of the execution as well.
Yeah.
In performance channels.
Yeah. And like I think even in that intermediate, AI can have so much value. Again, if we sort of accept the fact that in-channel optimization is increasingly falling behind the walled garden, I think that even that kind of intermediate layer of like how much I'll be spending on different channels, right? I think again, back in the day, it used to be it became such a performance game of like, oh, the CPA over here is slightly higher than the CPA over here, so I'm going to get rid of that one. I'm going to put more money into that one. It just became this game of just like follow the metric, find the cheapest metric. And actually, I think AI can actually make a step back and sort of say much broader questions around where we're putting our money, which is actually like, well, actually, there's all a knock-on effect. CPA is hugely determined by top-of-mind awareness. If you're already really high in the consideration set, acquiring a customer is a lot easier than if you come out the clear blue sky and no one's heard of your brand before. And actually, AI can really help you sort of find, again, those patterns and those connections across all of these various data sets and sort of say like, hang on a second, maybe don't just chase the lower CPA number over here, because 6 months down the line, actually, that might actually mean it's going to be a lot more expensive than what you're paying right now. And again, I think that there's a little bit of science and a little bit of art. And I think, again, even in something like media planning, something like that, it's, using the AI to do the science bit to get back to the art of like how to build brands, I
think we get exhausted in general societal ways. I think that we'll see in the next 10 years, we'll see like a pushback on digital in general, like in many different ways, whether it's social media or whatever. I think we've
already seen it, right? With like Gen Alpha and Gen Z and becoming more disconnected and wanting real life experiences. There's a lot more than
100%. Let's do a little quick wrap up with stop tour just to make sure that we cover all the bases. So Tom, I covered the evolution.
Yes.
We covered embeddings. How that unlocks it.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah. We even went into like the shape of teams.
Yes.
And we touched a little bit there on kind of like far future, what it will be like in a kind of new front door, assuming agentic world, and what it means to kind of take that intelligence, with bringing it to customers rather than keeping it with brands.
Yes.
Yeah. Chris, was my weakest area, right? Arguably. But at first we kind of you gave us the state of play. You told us the promise and you give us a state of play in terms of it was meant to be disrupted. Actually, that wall gardens hardened instead, and instead they actually got higher walls, right? And there's more of a black box to, making the investment, who you should actually cast in at to, and then getting the results back. And marketers are actually more focused on getting the results back. So as far as they get that, they're fine, right? And I believe I got this right, but keep me honest. I think for you, the opportunity is connecting those data sets, really understanding and boiling the science so that you can actually perfect the art, right? I think I got that. Is there anything that I missed?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
All right. Cool, man.